Since the advent of the Apple Vision Pro, I've wanted to get my hands dirty making spatial content. And unless you're willing to walk around with one of these strapped to your head, or upgrade your iPhone, or rely on sort of fake Apple intelligence conversions, your options have been a little limited, especially when it comes to converting your own 3D rendered content from Blender. But I figured it out and I wanted to share how I did it. So I'm going to show you here in Blender. This is a model I made of the Saltaire Pavilion, a building that burned down 100 years ago. And I've looked at the model in the Apple Vision Pro, which is a cool experience in its own right because you can turn it around and see it from all angles, but you are kind of depending on the Apple Vision Pro to render all of the lighting, and it does a great job of taking the environment into account and making it look like it's really sitting on your table. But I also went to a lot of care to make this render look the way I wanted to, with my custom lighting and the background and the reflections that I like, and that's an experience that the Apple Vision Pro you have a lot less control over in that live 3D model sense. So if you want to see your final rendered version in spatial photos or video, there is a way you can go about that by converting it to a stereoscopic image. So the first step you do is happens over here in the output panel. You scroll down just a little bit and click on stereoscopy, and that enables the mode that will create a stereoscopic image. So that's step number one. Step number two is going into the camera settings. So it's a two-step process. Come back over here into your camera, whichever camera you're using to do your render, and scroll down to the stereoscopy mode, which is now visible. It wasn't visible before until you click that on. So over here in the stereoscopy panel, you've got a lot of options to kind of manipulate the effect. So right now I'm looking at this in the rendered view. In order to see the effects of the stereoscopic settings, what I need to do is turn on the viewport shading mode, and that is going to show me the effect of these features as I adjust them. So you saw when I first had it on, the settings actually weren't dramatic enough to see a result on the screen. But what you're seeing here is kind of akin to what you used to see in old school 3D, where you had those little cardboard glasses that had a red lens and a blue lens, and they would print out an image that had an offset red and blue image, and the lenses would kind of mask out one image or the other. That's the paradigm they use to show what the stereoscopic image looks like on your screen here, just as a preview, so you can understand the effect. So you saw when I first came in, I adjusted this interocular distance so that I could see the spread here a little bit better. By default, it puts a value in here, which is similar to the value or the distance between your eyes. So that is what that represents, the distance between the eyes or the lenses as the photo is being rendered. So it started out, at around 3 inches or so, which is about how far your eyes are apart. But in some cases, you need to mess with that to make the effect a little bit more dramatic. The other setting you're going to be finding yourself playing with a lot is this convergence plane distance setting here. In order to visualize what that does, we have to go off axis here and look at the image a little off to the side, and you can see this kind of darkened gray rectangle here, which represents your viewport, but it also shows you with some depth where that viewport is, and you can think of that like the movie screen. So anything that sits in front of that gray box is going to appear like it's popping out of the screen, and anything behind the box is going to have depth into the screen. So you can adjust that and also kind of affect the drama of the effect. The closer it is, the less it's going to pop out in front, and the more the rest of the image is going to recede into the screen. So when I rendered this before, when I played with it before, I found about 260 whatever some odd feet, 270, I don't know, somewhere in there, creates kind of a nice effect where just the front part of the building is popping out and then the rest of it recedes back in. And this is of course going to vary depending on your subject matter and the effect you're trying to create. But I'm going to come back here into the camera view again and again, adjust this interocular distance. This is the thing that's really going to create the drama of the effect. And I'm going to bump this up quite a bit higher just so I can, your eyes aren't actually going to be 20 feet apart. But what this is doing is spreading those two, you can think of it almost like two cameras, spreading the two cameras apart so their distance now, in this case, are about 26 feet apart, but it's taking one camera shot from that side and another camera shot from this side so that it can kind of see around the building a little bit so that it can gather more spatial data. And it's going to create, the output of this is two images in the end, one from the right and one from the left. And we can converge them then in the end to create a 3D image. So I think this looks pretty good the way it is. So now I need to go and render this image out. And coming back up here to the output, we looked at the stereoscopy panel. When you go to the output panel, there is also a new section that becomes available here in views. And this gives us a little control. There are a few different ways of rendering it depending on the system that you're using. And we are, again, targeting the Apple Vision Pro. So first, we just want to make sure that Stereo 3D is clicked on. If you just click on individual, it will only render one image, and we don't want that. Also, for the conversion process that we're going to use, side by side is the option that we want. And basically what that does is creates an image that is twice as wide as your actual rendered output, and it puts the left image on the left and the right image on the right. So what you're going to see when you pull this image up in your image editing software of choice is two images side by side that look almost identical, except they're from slightly different angles. And so we want to choose side by side. Now, interlace does a weird thing where it kind of weaves the two together. There's also a top to bottom, which does the same as left to right, except it just puts one on top of the other instead of next to each other. But we're going to choose side by side to render. And then, just as you normally do, we're going to go and render the image. At first, it's not going to look much different. You're not going to... I was confused at first, wondering if this was actually working. But if you sit here and watch it long enough, you will see that it goes through two separate phases of rendering. So it's going to render one image, and then it's going to go back and render it again. And again, these are the two images that go side by side from slightly different angles. Then at the very end, you'll see it kind of recomposite those two images back together into a similar view that we had in our viewport, where there's kind of a red-blue offset sort of an image there. And that also confused me because I thought, oh, I wanted a side-by-side, but the output that you see in the renderer is not actually the output that you get when you save the file. So we're going to let this render for a minute, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see, the render is now done, and as I mentioned before, it sort of shows you that weird composited red-blue stereoscopic image, not really the final output that we want, so don't be too confused by that. Just go up here and save your image as you normally do, and then just double check when you're saving it out that you've got Stereo 3D and again side-by-side saved, and whatever output format you want. I'm going to choose a JPEG for this kind of an image. And I'm going to come in here and save it in this folder. So if we go and look at that image, what I've just saved here, you'll see that it is two nearly identical images side by side saved as one ultra-wide JPEG. To get it to be the proper format that your Apple Vision Pro will read, it needs to be converted into the special HEIC format that has spatial metadata. Apple, if you go on their developer website, does provide you a bunch of code you can use, this giant script, and there are methods for doing that via the command line, or you can also embed that somehow into like an action script or even an app. And I started down that road myself, but Despite what I initially found in my first Google search, there actually are existing apps that do this, and one that I kind of fell upon by accident. It's called Spatial Camera, and it's actually an iOS app, so this works on your phone or your iPad. There may be others out there too. If you find them, drop them in the comments. I'd love to explore some other options, but this one works great. I haven't found a need to really explore much more. The reason why this app was a little hard for me to find is because it's actually marketed as an app that allows you to take spatial photos with models of the iPhone that don't officially support it per Apple's spec. And I was able to successfully take a spatial photo using this app on my iPhone 14. But a secondary feature, which isn't broadly advertised, is the ability to take other formats of images and create spatial photos from them, including side-by-side JPEG images like we just created. So I'm going to pop open the Spatial Camera app and then click on Image Transcoding, and I'm going to pick a file from iCloud Drive, but if you save this elsewhere, of course, go where the image is and untitled.jpg, so original, and then we open this up. Now, given the format that we exported from Blender, all we need to make sure that we have selected here under the input 3D format is that it says 3D FSBS, which stands for full side-by-side, which is the format that we outputted from Blender. And then click on transcoding, and it's going to save this to your photo album. So all I do from here is pop on the Apple Vision Pro and open up the Photos app. Now you're not going to be able to see this well on your 2D screen, so I'm going to move my head back and forth just a little bit so you can get kind of a sense for, the depth that we're dealing with here, but you're not going to really understand until you open it up on your own Apple Vision Pro and see it in your own spatial environment. But it is quite stunning and really exciting to see your own creations pop out of the Apple Vision Pro in spatial 3D. So happy creating.